Music Matters. Mr. Wilter.
Howdy.
How you doing today, man?
I'm good.
Thank you for doing this. Appreciate you. Yeah, how you doing, bro? What's new?
Nothing. I mean, any excuse to come out to the valley.
Yeah.
You know, in 106 degree weather.
It's disgusting, bro. It's so
I'll take
bad.
that up every time. I love the valley.
Yeah, for context, I'll just say once. We're doing this in the living room because the studio is, like, insufferable. There was, I'm trying to think of the hottest one. We did one with this guy, Ed, from this band called The High Curves a couple weeks ago. And, like, it's so, bro, like, you literally can just, like, watch the sweat dripping off of us, like, within the middle of the interview. It just got unbearable. That one and the Curtis Waters one we did one time, oh, my God, dude. We had to, like, take breaks because, and then I guess the Mario, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, there were a lot that were really, really hot. But this, yeah, it would have been unbearable today, bro. You said you live, like, out in more centralized LA, right?
Yeah, I live in Echo Park right now.
Because the heat difference is there. It's crazy how much hotter it is here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it cooks back here. I mean, it's still pretty hot on east side LA.
Mm-hmm.
Getting that far from the ocean, but I mean, this feels like a toaster oven when I stepped out of my car.
Yeah,
like the hot wind coming down the hills.
It's bad, bro.
Yeah.
We grew up in upstate New York. That was very, very much been a huge adjustment moving out here, right? Because does it get hot up there or no? It's humid, right? It's different.
Oh, I mean, it's like a hot, sticky night, summer type of humidity heat. It's different. It's more of a heat you feel in your bones.
Yeah.
That you just like really gotta sit down and sink into. Versus like it can get pretty hot here without really like it taking out of you. I feel like it's like once you hit 90 out here, then you really start to have to change what you're doing.
Yeah.
But it could be like 80 and humid there, and it's like.
I was talking to a friend of mine who grew up in Arizona, and he was explaining me just like how in summer you just don't go outside. And I was like, I just can't imagine that. That's such a different kind of summer.
Yeah. No, yeah, you just got to hit the AC, hit the pool, get into video games.
Yeah, literally, bro. Literally. When you moved out here from New York, so you said you went to USC, right?
Yeah, I came out to school to go to SC in 2015. And so, yeah, I mean, the biggest difference has honestly been no seasons. I feel like
interesting. Okay.
Like that's the thing I like miss the most, and life felt like I had like a certain cadence or like time markers. Be like, oh, I really got to enjoy the summer because winter's coming soon, and I felt like my time was very demarcated, and then it's just been like one long season here where it's sometimes hot and sometimes it's like chill. That
is a weird thing because I guess I've never even experienced that until I moved here either, to a certain degree, because like the seasons to me in the Bay Area, they're pretty similar to these seasons for sure. It gets way colder up there, but at the same time, like I always felt the distinction between the seasons just based on the temperature, which is interesting because I would assume somebody who's from the East Coast or somewhere else might experience it in terms of like snow versus sun, or like
wintertime was basketball practice and driving my family's minivan in the dark at 4 p.m. to basketball practice, blasting, nothing was the same. So I was like, winter rolls around, we're putting the Drake on.
that's so wild, dude.
Yeah, because I was like the oldest of my friends. And so I was the first one driving by like a bunch of months. And I had a minivan too, so I could fit all my friends in it. We'd go, there's this theme park in my town called Rye Playland. They have this huge parking lot. We'd go there in the winter and just like load up Drake, and we'd call it Draking and driving. And we'd just like drive in circles in this huge parking lot for 2 hours.
Just bump Drake.
Like cake.
What era of Drake was that? Was that the
That was Nothing Was the Same.
Oh yeah, dude.
Came out sophomore year.
That's an amazing Drake.
Put that on my skull candies as I'm walking into the opposing high school's gym.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. So you were a hooper growing up?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So was I. Yeah, dude. Basketball is something I missed very dearly, and I recently have fallen back in love with in like a really hard way. I play like 3 times a week now.
Yeah. Shouts out to hoopers everywhere.
Yeah, literally. That's so funny that you.
Shouts out to MJ Lenderman for making it cool for artists to like sports again.
Does MJ Lenderman play basketball?
I don't know if he plays, but he talks a lot about sports in his lyrics.
Jordan wanted to sign with Adidas. For sure. That's crazy. I guess I never even put that together. That was like the sports reference. I don't know. I just never thought that much into it.
His name might even be a reference
to somebody, maybe
Michael Jordan, MJ.
Well, yeah. Oh,
maybe.
Oh,
I don't know. That might be a stretch, but
watch it. I feel like watching MJ Lenderman hoop. That just doesn't compute in my brain. Like I can't see him like being a basketball player.
Yeah, like what's his player comp? What's your player comp?
Some say I'm kind of like a prime Kemba Walker.
Kemba. That's nice.
How about you?
I've been told Bogdanovich, which has gotten like after this Olympics like much more valuable. So like I'm really, really proud of that.
That's beautiful. That was such a very specific reference. Driving to high school or driving to your games or your practice at 4 o'clock when it's dark outside, and it's crazy because I was writing. I write every morning, but I was writing last week, and I actually was talking about like things that I miss doing, and that was one of them. Was like the feeling of going to like CYO or AAU basketball practice when you were in like 7th or 8th grade or whatever, and you're driving to practice, and it's literally just like dark outside at like 5:30 because it's just like right when the seasons change. Did you like? So if you grew up playing sports, were you into music as a kid? Because I know you said you came out here to go to school, but you weren't going to school for music. When did that tilt kind of begin to happen, where you kind of transformed into like, you know,
it was
the dreams
always
happening?
There, like, just from as early as I can remember, I'd always been a singer. And like I think the first band we used to, my parents would play a lot of like the Chili Peppers greatest hits in the car. And so that's kind of how I learned to sing, was being like in the backseat trying to sound like Anthony Kiedis.
Gotcha. That's a great reference to like learn from, I feel like.
Yeah, so I think I just kind of through osmosis learned to sing from Anthony Kiedis, and then then just picked up a guitar, but I wasn't really like serious about it. I took some lessons and stopped, and then like actually the thing that got me like writing songs was the Mumford & Sons like folk revival.
Gotcha.
I was like really into Mumford & Sons, which got me into like, then I ended up getting really into Bob Dylan. I say, you know, from there. But like,
who else was in that era? Like of Monsters and Men, like
Monsters and Men, Lumineers, like Stomp Clap stuff. Like there was some really, really horrendous shit. There was also some pretty good stuff too. I mean, like Fleet Foxes and Father John Misty. I guess he's a little later, but
I never even think about the fact that kind of was like a little folk revival.
Yeah, I went to, I mean, honestly, one of the most lit concerts I've ever been to was Mumford & Sons' first tour. I don't know if it was the first tour, but it was the first tour after that album dropped. They played Terminal 5, and I went, and it was like fucking madness. So that was pretty cool. So then, like, I had like a shitty Squier electric guitar that I barely played, but once I like saw that, I'm like, oh, I'm a white boy, I can do this.
I can do this.
This is my lane.
Yeah.
So I like begged for acoustic guitar and like so being like, I'm gonna be a songwriter, and started listening to a lot of Bob Dylan. And like for me, guitar has always been like a songwriting tool. I've never tried to be a ripper or like a lead guitarist. And like through playing enough, like I picked up some of it, but still it's like I've only really ever approached it as like a tool to write songs.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's so funny how people go to instruments for different reasons. Like I think somebody from the outside would assume that wouldn't be the case, but I think like internally there's so many different ways you can even begin to like internalize making music, right? Like you can come at it from an instrumental angle, you can come at it from a songwriting perspective. I think, I mean, me personally, just you know, like my own bias, I definitely gravitate towards musicians I think who are storytellers first. Yeah. Like folks who like are compelled to write about their experiences more so than they are to like write a very interesting riff or something.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I've always it takes me so many listens. Even my favorite music, you could ask me like one of my favorite songs, like what's it about, I'd be like, oh, I don't know. I've always feel like I've liked bands and artists that are like really beloved in like South America and Brazil.
Do you have any examples?
Like Radiohead, The Strokes, Arctic Monkeys. Like a lot of that is just like bands at the time, but I think a lot of that has to do with like bands where listening to the words isn't as important. It's more of like an instrumental thing and more of a vibe thing. I mean, like in a lot of those bands, it's tough. Like the Arctic Monkeys, I have no fucking clue what
Alex Turner's talking about.
Yeah, the accent's too thick, you know?
It's also interesting because sometimes like there can be words or stories that even if you don't understand what they're talking about, they just compel a certain feeling. I think Brian Seller from the Front Bottoms is one of my favorite examples of this. Like he's a lyricist that like sometimes you don't know, like when he says like I tripped over an extension cord as I was going to the market, like you don't know what he's saying. Like I don't know what the fuck that's about. Like I don't know what the metaphor is there or if it's just, you know, strictly literal. but something about the way that he says it makes me feel like it means something, and I think sometimes that's all that needs to happen, you know?
Yeah, it's I feel like with lyrics, there's like, obviously there's like a deeper, more narrative meaning as it goes along, but there's also like a physical meaning, like how it sounds. So like stylistically, I guess I'm just describing poetry, but
yeah.
When I write lyrics, it's definitely more of like the narrative or whatever the song is about comes last.
God, interesting.
So it's like first is the guitar, and then the melody, and then usually when you're coming up with a melody, you have like some junk words that land and be like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I can kind of base some shit around that. But it's like it's fitting. It's like puzzle pieces, and then eventually, like, excuse me, if you're lucky, you can work in a narrative.
How like streamlined is that process for you? Like, do you feel like you ever tell the stories first through the chords, or do you feel like you're just laying a groundwork to tell the stories over?
I think it's just like a series of like filters. I mean, you're just like, I look at it as like it's like a stream or like water that's like going through the sand, and eventually it like works its way. But yeah, I don't know. I think you kind of like, especially when you're like early on and working on a song, it's like listening to a song that you really love and you like fall in love with it.
Yeah.
And before you fall out of love with the song, like you can really feel it and feel how new it is, and like feel kind of like the different things and like different directions you can go with it. So that always like, it's more of like, maybe there's some certain things I want to write about or certain narrative things I want to tell that I'm just like waiting to work on until the song that feels right for it comes around.
Interesting. So you're not the kind of person who like has an experience and then you're like, you instantly run to write about it. It's more so just like having something stored and then waiting for the experience to fit it.
Yes, but I did I did write a song last week where it was like, I got back from Berlin and like I met someone there. I was like, I'll write a song about it.
Yeah.
And I did end up doing that. So I don't know. So this is like opposites, but mostly no. It's like back to like what I was like. I feel like I cut my teeth for so many years trying to be like a cringe John Mayer-esque white boy songwriter.
Interesting.
Before I like quit music, that like I feel like I'm a songwriter first and foremost in everything I do, and every song starts on guitar, and then once I like kind of find a riff and like a little bit of a song structure I like, then everything follows from there.
So did you quit music and then come back to it?
Yeah, I quit for like almost 3 years, I think.
Gotcha. Interesting. Why did you originally quit, and what eventually brought you back?
Well, I was doing like the songwriter stuff, and I came to USC, and I was still doing it a bit, and yeah, I just kind of had an experience where it was just kind of like, you know, college is expensive, and it's like, what the fuck am I doing, like studying music, you know? And
plus, I'm
like,
sure it can be hard to like be in that environment, be spending all that money, and being like, wow, like I need to get return on my investment, you know?
Yeah. So and I, you know, I'm like 19 and shit, so just very impressionable, and it was just like, I was like really good at science and math. I was always like kind of a techie person. So I was just like, yeah, you know, like computer science, coding, people say that's like kind of creative, you can do kind of cool stuff with it, and it's math and science, and it pays well, so it's like fuck it, I'll do that. And like I had a good time. Like the early part of like the first 2 years of like a comp sci degree are very fun. It's like doing a lot of puzzles and shit, you know, and so like it was very cool, and like meeting people who like, you know, there's obviously a lot of terrible tech people, like an industry that's some of like the worst, most brain dead people in the world, who like think they're the smartest people in the world. But there are also like really amazing people who want to build shit and build interesting shit. They're not the people who always earn a lot of money, but like sometimes they are. But like that kind of felt very freeing, and so I was kind of in like a world, like I like ended up working on this chat bot with other people, like 3 other people at my school. And like we ended up like getting some funding and like trying to talk to the school, and like we built this whole thing on like Facebook Messenger. You could like ask it any question. You like, what's for lunch at the dining hall? Da, da, da. And so we were like trying to get that going, and that was like a really fun exciting
cool.
experience. And like,
so it was like a USC thing. Like you'd ask them questions
well,
about
we
USC.
wanted to like franchise it to other schools.
Gotcha.
And shit, but
that's sick.
I mean, it was like 4 people. It's like being in a band, you know, and you're like going and pit. It was fun. But then like later on and like I ended up having to take more like super insane like operating systems classes and like electrical engineering and like just all these like super sciencey shit that I knew I'd never use, but I just like, and I knew I didn't really kind of want to do it, but it's like, I want to do something creative. For a while, it's like the intersection of art and technology, and I was like, fuck it, if I'm gonna take a risk, I'm just actually do the music thing. And
interesting.
If I'm gonna do the music thing, I don't need to go get a different degree. I'm just gonna finish this up, and like have this in my back pocket, and then just start doing the music thing.
Yeah, and just have something to fall back on just in case.
So yeah, it was just like growing up too, and just being like, what do I like actually want to do? And yeah.
That process I feel like is so much of just like trying on different shoes and seeing what fits. And I think some people find it early, some find it late, but I don't think there's any right time to find it. And I actually kind of feel like everybody's meant to, you know, I think everybody finds that thing when they're supposed to find that thing. I don't feel like it happens like a second sooner or a second later, but it's cool that you kind of have 2 experiences in those different worlds. I'm sure the people in them are very, very different, and you had to kind of, I'm sure, adapt it to like a whole different crowd of people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's different. It's just like a different type of person, like a certain type of like a risk averse type of person, and and that's not like totally different. I mean, like they're like the people that are really interested in like building cool technology, I think are actually pretty similar to musicians and artists.
It's definitely risky.
But the problem with the tech industry is that you have a bunch of tech bros and people that don't want to actually do shit, that talk like they're those people. And there's really only so many like fucking Mark Zuckerbergs or people that are like actually out there trying to do shit. So. But it's an industry that's co-opted to talk. So
in that way, it's actually, there's like an interesting parallel to the music world there. Yeah. Because it is such a risk. I feel like all the best things in my life came after I took that jump. And I think it's so difficult, and it's interesting, and not to act like I'm better than anybody that, you know, wants to do something that, you know, is more lucrative or more safe. That's so valid and so understandable. But I will say, like, it does kind of hurt me sometimes when I meet people who I'm like, I know you can do this, and I know that like if you really tried, you would do this, but there's just that mental blockage, whether it be from your family, from, you know, this preconceived notion of what you're supposed to be, whatever that external factor is that's kind of like keeping that thing inside you. It's frustrating to watch somebody when you know, like, damn, like you have it, and I just wish you would do it. But sometimes they just don't want it, and that's just what it is.
Yeah, there's a certain day, I think there's just some people that are willing to take the jump and some people that aren't. And some people like live their whole lives like going to the edge and coming back. You know?
Yeah, for sure. And do you feel like when you kind of took that jump, was it scary? Was it kind of a gradual thing since you did have this degree, or did you just graduate and you were like, I'm just gonna kind of piece it together? What was that process like, kind of fully committing yourself to music after school?
It was like really scary. It felt really dumb and impractical. Like I was pretty tough on myself through it, but it also like I felt really relieved. Like, oh, I know what I'm doing now. My brain is not just searching in a million directions for like what I could be. Like, I should do this, should I do this, should I do this? And I was just like paralyzed. And I was like fuck it, if I'm gonna take a risk doing anything, let's do the thing that I always know I've wanted to do. So it was really clarifying. And I don't know, and you know, you just kind of like, it was interesting because like right after I made that decision, the pandemic started. And I was like,
that's a hard time to do.
Like, oh, I'm gonna like get a job at a restaurant in LA. I'm gonna sign an apartment. I'm gonna like go get someone to produce my EP, because I had like some songs written for an EP, and the world shut down. I just went back to Massachusetts. Like I'm not gonna. I don't want to pay rent, and like in ways like that whole process like forced me to produce my own shit. While like I was not paying rent and like staying at my parents' place, which was really, really nice. And it forced me to produce, which I'm like really happy that I produce my own shit, because I think it's such an advantage creatively and like sonically. Like even though your shit might not sound as 100% clean as everything that's out there or what it could be, the like creative choices that you make and like the 80% is good of a thing like make the whole difference. And it's like I've always been really proud, and like people tell me that like my stuff does, there's certain there's obvious influences, but that I've always been proud that my stuff sounded pretty different from other stuff the whole time.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely does. I think it's really easy to like spend your whole life never wanting to make that jump. And I think like for me personally, like my fear was always me being on my deathbed and knowing that I didn't do it when I think I could have done it.
Yeah.
Like that was always the biggest fear. And it's really hard
You're
to like
thinking about that? You're thinking about being an old man?
all the time, dude. Yeah, I thought about it so often. It was like, because I was like half in, half out for so long.
Yeah.
And I very similarly was like, just what pushed me over the edge was that thought of like, damn, Dante, like one day you're going to be like 95 and dying. And you're going to have to like reconcile with the fact that you never tried to do the one thing that you knew you wanted to do. Yeah. So, and I think just out of fear, largely, I kind of like became this person where I was like, I want to do this so badly. I'm not going to try to like pretend like I don't want to anymore, you know?
Some people call that bravery, brother.
Maybe you could say that. I don't know. I don't think it's that brave. I think it was just out of like obsession and fear. Largely, I feel like there's definitely a fear aspect of it, and I'm glad I didn't. It's not like it was fully fear. It was like a mix of fear and love. I think was like brought me into doing it. But
that's cool.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy I did it. I think when on the producing thing that's interesting to me is like I think another big part of that is like when you're self-producing stuff, you have a hand in every single piece of the process, and it feels so wholly yours because like every like last idea with that song or that album or that project or whatever it is, it came from your brain in some way, shape, or form. Do you think when you started just fully self-producing stuff, because I know now you work with some other people, right, on some things, or is it mostly
recently? But honestly, the first two, everything that's released so far is self-produced.
Gotcha. Was it hard to get to a space where you weren't comfortable collaborating and stuff, or how did it feel when you first started doing it?
Honestly, just because I got such a kind of a late start to the music thing, and I didn't really ever build much of a music network at USC until I left. I started meeting the USC people after I left. I don't know. It's only been till recently that I've found friends who I like align with super creatively, Jacob and Aaron Backstrad and Deloitte LT, that like if we were hanging out, it's like, oh, let's like work on some music, you know? Or it's like we're first and foremost boys. Or I saw Toto this past weekend at a casino. Nice. And the main guitar guy was calling everyone else in his band his soul brother. Those are my soul brothers.
That's
like
crazy.
White guy is like literally like a Tim Heidecker character. It was amazing.
These are my soul brothers.
So we're boys first and foremost, but then also like our songwriting is really different, but we kind of approach producing the same way, which is like home recording and really like leaning into the imperfections of that and the software that makes stuff kind of interesting. I feel like finding that musical community is such a big step for so many people. Like when you first find that just tight crew of people that you feel like you align with creatively, I feel like that just changes the game. And it's hard. There's no scenes anymore.
100%, dude.
There's no scenes anymore.
I totally agree. I think COVID like killed the modern idea of a music scene.
Not even that. I think the internet killed it. There's no place.
I was just because of our access to information. I was talking
to this artist that was like, she's like in her 40s, and like I was talking about how she came up, and she was like from Portland, and she like would go to a venue and see all the bands and become friends with all of them, and they all kind of ended up playing, doing similar stuff because of that. Like everything's so fractured and online now. There's no, I mean, like Makeout Music actually is a real kind of
it's incredible.
Like I guess a third space. I mean, it's not necessarily like a third space in that like people are just showing up to hang out, but in terms of like a music community, it's like the closest thing I feel like there is. Like
I fully agree. I think those guys are onto something amazing.
Yeah. So, no, I feel really lucky to like find the people that I do collaborate with, because it's otherwise it's just like turbulence.
It's interesting because I feel like I grew up even on the internet seeing a bit more of like this fluctuation of like different music scenes and like the way they were interacting with each other. And it was always weird as a kid because I always felt like I was like an outsider looking into it. And there was a little bit of that, I think, like pre-COVID for sure. But I feel like largely post-COVID, dude, that shit for the most part just was gone, I feel like. And I think a lot of that is like so many of us were in our room doing our own thing for so long that like that formation of a music scene just never, I don't know, it never reignited. It's also so like, you're right, we're so fractured into our own little corners of the internet. Like I think about this all the time, dude. Like there are artists with like and like my life is music. Like all I do is music.
Yeah.
And like there are artists with like 20 million monthly listeners that I've never heard of because they just exist in this entirely different pocket of the music industry and the internet than I ever have or ever did or ever will. It's so strange. And I see it all the time. Like there'll be folks who I'm like someone will tell me about it, like, oh, you hear about this show or that show? And it'll be dudes with like literally 20 million monthly listeners who are selling out arenas. And I'm like, I've never heard a song of yours. Just because you're right, we're so fractured into these isolated groups of like different corners of the internet. Like it's impossible to hear everything now. And I would imagine like in music scenes, at least when our parents were growing up and stuff, you know, it was so much more localized and like decentralized, or I guess not. I guess it's more the right word would be centralized, but like so much more localized and centralized. So where like if a band was really making waves in your town or your city, like you probably heard of them, and you know because of that, more people have a chance to meet them and you know meet the bands they're playing with. It's so much more online now. It's just so different. Yeah.
Also, like an interesting thing too that I kind of learned about recently was, one of the big reasons genre exists, is literally because of like the record shop and like each section. You go to a certain section for a certain type of music. I never really realized how physical that was, and that like people kind of stuck to the genre so that they could be within that certain section of music. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, you know.
But you also like had to in an interesting way too, because like it's so different, like that kind of music consumption versus like how we consume music with streaming. It's like I cannot imagine every time you wanted to listen to a new band or a new artist having to like actually go and buy their record. I just think it probably produced this environment where like there's way less exploration going on than there is now.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, I don't know. I feel like there's more exploration in terms of selling an album than selling a song. Interesting.
Well, I agree with that, but I guess my point was less about the the format that you're releasing it in, but more so that you had to pay for it.
Yeah.
Because like if I want to get into like a new genre or something, or like if I want to find a new artist, I can just like go to my recommended and just like, or if I hear something on Instagram where I'm like that's crazy, or even on the radio or something, I can be like, okay, I'm gonna go back and listen to this song on streaming. Whereas like even on the radio, when our parents were doing that shit, like I bet like I guess I always assumed at least that if they heard something on the radio they really liked, they had to actively go search it out at a record store and go buy the CD, or else they couldn't go and listen to it again. Which I think for so many people had to be such like a blockade into music exploration.
Yeah,
it's super interesting, bro. Like I honestly feel like I never resonate with because I feel like a lot of people get in this mindset where they'll shit on the modern consumption of music and you know make a point about like streaming and how it's been bad for
it's
music
amazing.
At large. I think it's great.
It's amazing,
right?
I need to like I'll switch it, like I'll try to switch it up and just listen to like NTS or radio and like not have any control over my music, or like just listen to albums. But I mean you're an idiot if you're not like, this is objectively amazing. I can listen to all the music in the world.
Yeah, dude. Like there was never
like
a
you can
time
have your
before.
nitpick, like, and I nitpick about like I hate like having to choose from everything every time I want to listen to music.
Yeah.
I can't just like see certain things and get deep into stuff, but like I don't know, that's kind of just me being a baby as well.
It's like a problem of abundance.
Yeah.
Which is something that at least, you know, I'd much rather have that problem than the problem of not being able to afford a record I wanted to check out.
No, it's great. I mean, like you're saying, like there's artists with 20 million monthly listeners who you've never heard of, you know?
Yeah.
It's more opportunity for everyone, but there's more noise, so that's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Which I would imagine from the artist perspective can be a little bit intimidating because there's just so many other people doing the thing that when you actually commit to yourself and like put all that you have into the music stuff, it's like you're no longer competing with just like other musicians in your town or even your city or even your country. You're now you're now kind of competing with attention, like this internet born attention. So you're not even just competing with musicians.
I go on Instagram and I feel really bad about myself for not releasing more music.
Yeah. I feel that too.
That's kind of what Instagram is for.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's so weird, dude. Like, there's never been this environment where we're just in this place where like we are literally competing. Like musicians are competing with like influencers. Like musicians are competing with like gardening streamers or like video game streamers. There's only so much like commodified attention on the internet. So it's like you're not even just competing with music makers anymore. You're competing with like anybody else that's trying to get people on the internet's attention.
Yeah.
It's so strange, bro. Do you feel like do you ever feel bogged down or like frustrated by the current state of having to promote your music online and like really having to push things on the internet? And do you feel like you've watched that change over the course of your life?
Yeah, it's been kind of a journey for me, and a journey that I'm still kind of in. I haven't found I found just like more success just like within Spotify with my music. I haven't really found much success on social media with my music. I think a lot of that has to do with like the type of music I make. I mean, I don't really know. You know, when the first album or the first EP dropped, I was kind of doing more like off the cuff, TikTok, Reels, whatever type shit, and didn't find much success with it. And then this last EP, I went and filmed like a bunch of just like a bunch of really high quality stuff. It was kind of like, I'm gonna go and like make the most, not necessarily professional, but like I'm gonna do the best I can do to make something as like visually pleasing and striking as I can. And it was like, to be honest, like a little disappointing when that didn't like, I don't know, you just hope everything like blows up.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
Like at the same time though, like it's something I'm super proud of, and that like a lot of people have like come up to me and told me they liked, and like stuff I've gotten new fans through. But
are you talking about the Chaser visualizer?
Yeah, like the whole visual EP, and then just like all the videos and kind of cut up pieces of that that like came out with it, you know. And it's like
so good, dude.
Thank you. Yeah, and it was really cool. It was a really cool experience to like do that, and like shouts out to my sister Hadley and her friend Jossie, and then also Francisco, my director. Like we basically didn't sleep for 30 hours straight.
That's crazy.
Like, because we filmed the live video at nighttime, we filmed the ice bath video at like 6 a.m. at sunrise.
Jesus,
we filmed Alone Again. It was. And then we filmed like the Alone Again, different parts of it through like kind of 30 hours, but we were kind of nonstop, and they were soldiers, and like throughout it was just like it really felt right, which was awesome. But you know, you put in a lot of that work, and you hope it takes off, and then it kind of doesn't, and then so I don't know. It's still kind of a journey. It's like, well, I can do kind of the off the cuff stuff, or if I'm going like fully in, that doesn't necessarily work either. So I'm kind of in this place where it's like, okay, what's the medium of that? So I don't know. Hopefully I find it, like more kind of like stuff as I'm writing, more covers, whatever, and I just film it better type deal. We'll see. I don't know.
That's such a
or
battle.
Maybe I gotta like thirst trap, you know, which I can do. Yeah. Like, come on, you know.
Gotta do it, handsome man.
Yeah, that's right.
I would imagine that's such a battle, dude. Especially if somebody like wants to make things that are like genuinely artistic and genuinely super interesting. It's got to be so difficult to grapple with the fact that like sometimes you can put your whole fucking heart, soul, and blood and sweat and tears into something, and it just might not do anything. It might not be what people want.
Yeah, and like I also just struggle with like every time I make a TikTok that's like, I'm a little bitty indie artist, like on these streams. Like, not that I really do that, but like whatever my version of that is, it's like damn, if I saw like my favorite artists like doing this, like I don't know, you know, like I
have a friend who I talked to this a lot about, and he always talks about how like a long time ago there weren't faces to musicians, and unless he went and saw them live, and he thinks that's like one of the most like, you know, like it's depending on what area you're talking about, like either, you know, you go and see them live, or maybe like they, you know, their photo was like taken and like put in a magazine or something. But like for the most part, a lot of musicians people listen to were faceless.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't know that much about them, and we definitely didn't have these like weird parasocial relationships. And now it's like, I know my favorite artist's like favorite thing to eat for breakfast. It's like that weird parasocial relationship where the mystery and the allure can kind of be gone. I think there's some folks who do it really well, even in the age of social media, but I think it's so hard to like creatively build this image when people want to live through you, you know, and be parasocial.
And there's always like, you don't have to do it. There's always the exception to everything. But then it's also like, most people, you got to do it. So it's really unclear. Sorry, I'm in front of my
No, you got that.
It's really unclear.
Good catch.
It's really unclear. It's all unclear.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's all noise.
Yeah. And it's just so like, it sucks too. Cause I know like, I've never really met a musician who got into music to be a content creator.
No, I had to stop myself about a year ago. I would like start to write a song, and then I'm a dumbass who thought that like everyone whose videos were like, this is me writing the song, was like the first time they did it.
Yeah.
So I like start to write a song and be like, I gotta set up my camera so I gotta record all this, and then I lose the idea, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what am I even doing? What's the point of this? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's frustrating, bro. It's just such a strange time to be a musician, because you're not only expected to be a musician, but you're expected to be a filmmaker, and you're expected to be like a director and like a business person. And I suppose to a degree that's always existed, but I think now more so than ever, we're asking these people to be something that they didn't sign up for, which, you know, I suppose that's just, you know, the way the tides turn, and, you know, adapt or die. But do you think you still have to do that? Because I think there are examples.
No. I mean, like, all of this is important, but like how your music sounds is kind of more important.
Yeah,
like,
I totally agree.
Nothing really like cuts through the noise like someone really, really liking your shit.
Yeah.
And if someone is like really, really liking your shit, then like, I mean, we can hate on TikTok and how random it is as well, but the algorithm does a really good job at promoting stuff that like is interesting and people want to see. Yeah. So like, there's a lot of cope as well, and like I'm guilty of it, of like, oh, like my shit's not popping. Yeah. But like the algorithm generally does a pretty good job of this is what people want to see. Yeah. So
I fully agree. Like I always
But
feel
if
like,
you focus on the music, it gets you a lot closer.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think like there are people who are able to kind of like almost like supersede this environment where they have to kind of like throw everything they have on TikTok. I think like there's some artists that just like still have built like incredible communities off the back of like really strong live performances, or they've built like incredible communities off the back of just the music in itself. I don't really think like you have to do it.
There is real, like, people forget as well, people still tell their friends about music. Yeah. And there is like real, you still can just get organic listeners by having good music.
Yeah. And I think it matters more than folks even think. Like I've never really bought into
the strongest recommendation you can get.
I totally agree.
Even all the TikTok songs I listen to, like pretty much mostly every song I've liked off of TikTok and gone and like put on a playlist and listened to, it's just that song. Yeah. You know, like all my favorite artists and artists I've been getting to in recent years are still always what my friends tell me to listen to.
Yeah, I totally agree. Especially when you have that like personal connection to it. And it's not just like a random person you found on the internet. You know, you can be like, oh, like this friend showed me this song.
They're vouching for it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're right. I think that word of mouth happens a lot more. And I think a lot of artists undervalue that. Especially like just, and this is always an interesting thing too, as any kind of creative, but it's like there is a level of like just promoting yourself you have to do in person that I think a lot of people don't buy into. Mm-hmm. But I think it's super, super important. And I think especially in the live sense.
What do you mean, like live?
Well, live, and then also just like the word of mouth thing where like you're your own biggest supporter, and like you're, you know, when you're talking to other people, like bringing up this stuff, and obviously not making conversations about you and not making things ingenuine, but like developing this sense of like promoting yourself first. I think that's really important. And then the live thing is a whole other thing where I feel like live shows right now are more undervalued than they've ever been. And 100%. I think like it cuts through the noise better than anything else does. And we're just existing in this environment on TikTok where it's just getting like increasingly harder to like really, really show what you're doing and really, really stand out. Like people's brains are so oversaturated with bullshit that like one thing you can't hide from is when you see an incredible live performance.
You have like, we're all here on TikTok trying to get someone that is like swiping through. Just still like looking for 1 second. But you have a crowd of like maybe 50 people who have to be there for 30 minutes. Like, talk about an opportunity right there.
Yeah.
How many impressions is that?
Yeah. And that's the thing. Well, that's the crazy part though, is like those 50 impressions are infinitely more valuable than like even 50,000 impressions you might get on TikTok, because like you're just existing in this space where people, if they are really blown away, they will walk away a fan and not a listener, right? Like if you have one song, or better yet, one video that blows up on TikTok, somebody can like take that song, add it to a playlist, and that could be the only thing they know you for the rest of your career. If you have an incredible live performance and you resonate with somebody on not only like a musical level, but like on a personal level, their level of buy-in is going to be significantly higher.
Yeah, everyone, even normies, like my dad will always be like, I saw this person with only this many people.
Yeah.
Everyone is craving that experience still. No one is like, I saw this TikTok when it only had 1,000 likes. Like,
do you think people will start doing that in the future?
People do that with streams and shit, but like, I don't know.
That'd be so weird.
Crazy, yeah.
If like people who are our age right now, when they have kids, like, yeah, like I found an NBA young boy when he only had 1,000 followers on TikTok.
I hope so. That'd be kind of sick. Get like a special for NBA young boy Fortnite skin for being his first million listeners.
Yeah, literally. How did you start to build out your live set? Do you? I know you're because you play live a good amount, right? And like, how did you get to this space where you're comfortable performing? And like, because I know earlier you were talking about how like you kind of started acoustically, and then you were doing more band stuff. How have you kind of grown your live set over the years? And what do you think the perfect formation for you on stage is?
Yeah, it's been changing and it's still changing. You know, ever since I like quit music and came back to it and then started producing, and I did all the tech stuff in between, it was kind of like, I like wanted like tech or like certain things to, not tech itself, but like music gear to be different and like inform the sound, like obviously while still being good and giving a good performance. So it's kind of like, my thing is like, I'm a songwriter. How can I make that as big as possible? So first I was just kind of pedals, but recently my setup has been I run my vocals and guitar through like a mixer. Right now I'm using a Tascam because they're like the preamps there, and then into this like drifting memory station, this like ambient pedal that I use. It's like mostly like an ambient box that people use to just like create walls of sound, but I've been using it kind of like riding a horse. Like if I keep it at a really low mix and the feedback at a certain point, I can kind of like get some cool effects and like a big wall, like songwriter ambiance. But like then if I stop playing guitar and I like crank the feedback or I crank the mix, I can make like these huge like noise washes of sound. So like some of it, like maybe my next like EP or album might have more of that. So far like it hasn't like sounded like that yet, but like my live set's kind of been like a tech work in progress, and like right now it's kind of like that dance. And like my EP release show was really fun. I had more members of my band up there, but like the sound in the room was weird and I felt weird, and I kind of lost control of the horse during the show. Interesting. What do you mean? Because I had total control over my vocals and my guitar, and it was coming through the amp, and the sound mixing person didn't. It just like, and I'm playing guitar and I have like foot pedals and I'm singing. It was just like too many things at once. Yeah, that makes sense. And like I just kind of lost control of like how, yeah, I just kind of lost control of the horse, and then I lost control of like feeling good about performing during it. But not for all the songs. Like I still feel like I gave a pretty good performance, but it's still a work in progress. There's like downsides to it, but yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I just like kind of just want to do something that like, I'm always just trying to find something that is like not really being done, but like not just for the sake of like being like a novelty act, more just kind of like, this is really me, this really sounds like me, and this might like be something that like pulls that audience in. And so like now I've done it enough times where I feel like I can deliver a good enough live set that like it could pull like anyone in, like the average listener. So right now that's where I'm at. I don't know how it's gonna change. Like Aaron's been doing some really interesting stuff with Fletcher. He's like building his own instrument with Pure Data and like Raspberry Pi and like,
what is that?
This thing called the Boxer, and Fletcher like made his own like granular synthesis thing for it, and they put all the knobs, and So maybe I'll start to do that. But until now, like, I have my current setup.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's interesting that you were talking about like that aspect of losing control. I feel like being a musician, it's so difficult to like truly have 100% control on stage, and then it's even harder to not lean into the fact that you don't really have control. Like, that can be such a difficult thing. I feel like if one thing goes wrong on stage, it becomes so easy to let everything else go.
Yeah, it's like a shroom trip. You know, it's like
you gotta lean into it.
If you're depending on the vibes, you can like certain things are not gonna make you spiral, but you can definitely spiral.
Yeah.
Under the right conditions.
It is kind of like a shroom trip because you kind of gotta like accept the fact that you're not in control.
You got all eyes on you for real, actually. You know, when you're on shrooms, you think you got all eyes on you, you don't, but on stage you actually do. So
yeah, definitely. And I haven't seen you live, but it sounds like that experience that you give when you're up there is very like captivating. Like, is it so? When you've gone through these different iterations of stuff, what have been the things that you think you've been able to develop that really pull people in? Like, what parts of your live set have always remained the same and you want to keep?
Yeah, I think I'm going to talk about it like really generally, but just kind of like weaknesses are always kind of strengths. I've always shied away from drums. I've always felt like that made my songwriting really interesting. And like when you don't have drums, you can kind of get to some different like songwriting places and journey. It's like Blonde, the whole Frank Ocean thing, where it's like, you know, drums are obviously like the most useful thing in getting someone to like nod their head. But if you can not have drums and like pull someone into a song, then it's like, okay, you're really onto something. So like my live set right now, I think I've done a good job of like, it's like a songwriter set, but I can kind of like throw these different things at them while being one person. And just have like a lot of like largeness flexibility, which is not a normal thing for like just a person with a guitar.
Yeah, that is
and
interesting.
Voice. But with that said, I don't have like any rhythmic stuff. So when I was playing with a band, that was kind of the whole thing, was like I had Aaron on the SP44 and he was like triggering all my drum samples. So
yeah, gotcha.
That's kind of the next thing to try to work in.
That's a really cool like descent from something that I think everybody wants to have, is always the drums. But I think you're right. Like, I think it's such like an immediate focus that very often it can become all people really are focusing on. And I think it can become very easy to just drown things out in rhythm and like not really have that, you know, either that melodic sense or even that sense of like storytelling. I find when people don't play with drums, I'm way more inclined to like really feel what they're saying. Also, just dynamically, I think you can create some moments when you don't have drums that just get really, like, it's very interesting when somebody through pedals or through guitar or through whatever is able to create that much noise without drums, because then I think the quieter moments hit even harder.
Yeah, it's a disadvantage and an advantage. I mean, if people are paying attention, you can hear a lot more.
Yeah.
But if they're not paying attention because they're not moving their head, you know, then that doesn't matter. So, yeah, exactly.
Kind of circling back to your EP that you dropped at the beginning of the summer, how have you felt kind of about the reception of the project as it's gone through? I know you were kind of expressing some frustrations with that big form video that you put out, and which, by the way, like I said, like, so cool, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Of course. Yeah.
It's still early. I feel very proud of it. And like transparently as well, like, you know, you expect your career, what you drop, to be like linear, you know? And while like, I think that like there was a lot of progress shown in like my artistry and the sound, and like, I like slaved over that EP for like over a year, and I had a whole EP that I scrapped from the year before it because I didn't release for 2 years in between, and yeah, so like it didn't stream as well, which like kind of felt like shit, but also at the same time I'm like more proud of it than my first EP even. So like, yeah, whatever. And also like, I don't know, I feel like you understand this too. It's like you love the thing you're working on and you hate the last thing you worked on. So there's just some of that too. This is
always
just like moving on to the next thing. But just kind of like, I worked on this thing for 2 years and spent so long mixing and spent so long making a perfect video for it. Now I'm just like making singles. I'm gonna start putting them out soon. It's like, now I'm like working with Jacob Aaron, working with like Ari, all these different people. It's like, let's crank stuff out. So like it is what it I don't know. It's all like a lesson, and like me doing that. It's like, okay, I don't need to go this hard necessarily. I don't need to like hold my music away and perfect it like perfectionism perfect, but like, you know,
it can be so easy
just work on it fast and on to the next thing, you know.
It can be so easy, I think, to be bogged down by the reception of something, or the idea of the reception that you thought you were going to get for something, and it just becomes such a losing battle.
And it's weird too, because it's like, it's so weird because it's like, I only really like, at the end of the day, you see the numbers, you check Spotify for artists, you look at that every day. But at the same time, I like look back at my first EP, and like my second EP did much better on like the Spotify editorial. So like, if I just changed my perspective, I'd be like, oh, this one did better. Yeah. You know, so I don't know.
How long did that project exist before you put it out? Like, did you sit with those songs for a long time?
I had like a big breakup in January of 2023, and I wrote all those songs in February of 2023. I recorded them February, March, and then the rest of the process was just like mixing it until August. Yeah. It was like very tumultuous mixing it because I like I ran everything through an effect on the master that made it like gave it ambiance and like had that as a through line through the whole EP. It was like this one like super ambient effect that I was like controlling the mix of throughout. And shouts out to my mixers. Shout out Corey for being a soldier. You know, that's definitely one thing your doctor / mixer hates is don't fuck with the master. But yeah. I figured out ways around it, but nothing really hits like throwing something you shouldn't throw on that master, man. You're like fucking with it. You're like, oh, I fucked this up. How can I fuck this up a little bit? Yeah. So a lot of it was my fault, and then also just like me being a perfectionist, but also like it wasn't like I didn't get to a point where I was like, this is what I was going for. Yeah. I got to the point with that for every song. So like, for me more now, it's not that I'm not like chasing. I'm chasing that feeling still. It still has to feel like, but I don't want to put out something I'm not like, yeah, it's ready. But I think I can get there earlier if I work faster and I don't have my own mental blockades that start to like calcify.
Like overthinking every single part of the process.
Just like my opinions about like everything. But then again, like sometimes when I'm going through the mixing process, like every time I listen to a new first mix for my mixer, I'm like, I hate this. Then I listen to it for 3 days and I'm like, oh, he actually like made this much better. I'm an idiot. So like, yeah, I don't know. It's tough.
It's really easy to sit there and overthink every single aspect of something and every little part of something, I think. And I think sometimes the most valuable thing you can do is just let go. Yeah. And just accept like the core of the song. You know, I guess more specifically in a mixing sense. Just accept that the core of the song will remain the same because you wrote it and you made it. And, you know, like, I think also a lot of musicians get in this mindset where like they're thinking about aspects of the song that like nobody else will ever even notice just because like they made it and it's their story and it's them.
It doesn't matter to me though. Like, when I listen back to my songs and if I hear a mistake, it's like,
it kills you. Yeah, that makes sense, dude. Yeah. It can be hard. It can be really, really hard to let go, I feel like. Yeah. Do you feel like since so many of those songs you said were about one particular situation, was it weird putting them out a bit later? Did you feel as connected to that situation, or did you kind of get to a place where, you know, obviously those wounds are healed and you get to a place where like you feel better about it? Is it harder to perform songs when some of the feelings that were present when you first wrote about them don't exist as much anymore, or at least they might be, they might be healed over a bit?
Kind of. I always felt like when I worked on the songs, I don't know if it was like some type of universal thing or whether I just kind of brought it out, but like usually when I like got into a flow, like it always kind of made sense with what was going on around the time, why I felt like that, and like why I resonated with certain ones I was working on. But no, honestly, like releasing it was a part of letting go. So even though it was pretty delayed, it was I was still dealing with it, and it felt like a big way of like letting go, you know? Yeah.
I feel like dude, that is like some of my favorite shit about like projects,
it was like,
opposed to
when I was like making the EP and whatever, I always like kind of imagined that like the person I wrote it about, that we were gonna be close and they would be like at the show and whatever. And then when like it came time to like release and like the show was like actually gonna come out, it was like, you know what, like I don't need to invite this person. Yeah, just like this is it, you know.
Yeah, no, 100%.
It's like so it like was a part of the letting go.
I think some of the lost art in this like single fueled culture we're kind of in right now is that like I think albums can exist as time capsules in a way that I don't know if a single can as much, Because when you're just putting something to long form like that and making a full project with a ton of songs, very often pointed at one specific concept or one specific experience, it's such a time capsule. Like, I think that's one of the coolest things about albums, that they exist forever. And even if, like, the emotions that weren't present, that were present when you were writing about it aren't there anymore, or they're not at the front of your mind anymore, your take on it will always exist there. And I think that's so cool, dude.
Yeah, and one thing I really, like, loved about my last EP, because I had, like, spent a year, like, trying to pull together all these random songs that didn't really fit together. And then I wrote 5 songs in a month and recorded them all at the same time, and they were all produced the same way. It's just like, this is cohesive. Like, this is a project. It's not just 5 singles.
Yeah, for sure. It's like about one thing. It's like a larger exploration on one feeling, which is a really, really cool concept. And I think it's harder to touch on with a single for sure. Do you feel like it's hard for you, because you were mentioning, like, that mixing process and, like, having that kind of perfectionist mindset? Is it difficult for you to really, really be in love with things that you make for a long time? Or do you know when something hits that it's that?
I gotta work fast. Work fast. Yeah, I'm working on a song now. I'm like, I gotta go. Yeah, I gotta work fast. I hate my stuff pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then, like, part of what makes the mixing process take so long is that I hate it.
Yeah.
So
it can become, I think, really easy to over dissect every single part of something and just, like, pick it apart so you hate it,
Yeah.
Especially when you're being so vulnerable in, like, a lot of the songwriting. It seemed like so much of the last project was a lot of, like, emotional stuff and just being so vulnerable. Is it ever hard to, like, express that level of emotion on a song? Do you ever feel like it's difficult to open yourself up in that way?
Honestly, no. It's like my catharsis. As corny as that is, it's a way for... It's interesting too, because I'll look back at songs I wrote and then I will understand kind of where I was much better from the future and be like, oh, that's why I was saying that. But at the time, like, certain things just kind of come out, and it's also, like, for me, like, I'm very ADHD. I have so much trouble journaling. I have so much trouble just like not being on my phone, all that shit. So, like, when I play guitar for an hour straight and end up writing something, it's like that was kind of like my form of meditation, my form of, like, getting out of my head and, like, into my body, and, like, kind of letting stuff flow from there. So yeah, then it makes sense, like, stuff will come up that I can kind of deal with there. And like, since it is the catharsis, like, and also because, like, I'm, like, an artist who, like, selfishly feels like I have to, like, put everything on the line and everything. I mean, it is true. Like, the truest stuff is gonna resonate the most with everyone because it's the truest thing, and usually the truest thing to talk about is the hardest thing to talk about. So it's that whole game of, like, being an artist, and like, you can definitely get addicted to, like, over showcasing that type of struggle. There's a short story, I'm forgetting the name of now, some philosopher, something. Oh, The Struggle Artist, I think is the name of it. Have you read that? It's just basically about this artist who's, I'm gonna butcher this, but like he's, like, in a cage and, like, starves himself, and is like, everyone comes and looks at the cage and is like, wow, that guy's, like, barely holding on to life, and he becomes, like, a carnival, like, freak, and everyone's like, look at this guy, and he, like, takes pride in, like, how much he's struggling, and an artist for the people, and eventually, like, people move on to the tiger in the circus, and he loses all his fans, but he's still struggling. He's so caught up in how much he's struggling and showing off to everyone, and he eventually just, like, dies.
It's like overindulging in one emotion.
Yeah, so it's like, you don't need to like really, really bludgeon yourself as a person. Like, you still live your life and be happy and all that stuff. But yeah, when you're writing, like, generally the toughest stuff to talk about is the stuff that's gonna resonate the most.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I think it's kind of like a sign that you're onto something. It's kind of like a sign that you're going to make something that resonates with somebody else, is when, like, you feel these things so closely, because we're all so related, dude. Like, we all feel the same shit for the most part. It's just, like, different versions of the same feelings. So if you describe it in your own way, there's probably a chance somebody's gonna resonate with it.
Yeah, I got a song right now that like I wrote and I don't want to share. My friends are like, you gotta share it.
Why not?
It's just like a little petty.
Gotcha. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's real.
Yeah, so
No, that makes sense. I really relate to it.
Yeah.
I really
Probably shouldn't put this one out. They're like, no, you gotta do it.
You gotta do it. Send the diss track.
Yeah.
I really relate to what you were saying about kind of having that ADHD brain and having the trouble staying off your phone and stuff. And I think it's when you can find things like guitar for you, it sounds like, or really anything. Reading is a big one for me. But when you find those things that do get you out of your head and kind of like bring you back to reality, that's such a grounding thing to do. And it can be so difficult. You almost have to like take all the distractions and put them in another room. At least that can be how I am. But when you can find those meditative things and they just flow out of you so naturally, it feels so good to just like be present and nowhere else but where you are right now.
Yeah. It also feels really good when you hit a sports bet, though, or when you're get a dub in Fortnite.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for real.
When you find a crazy artist on TikTok.
Yeah, that's the affliction we got.
Yeah, for sure. It's like so difficult, I think, to like be present, and it's so weird, dude. When you think about like, honestly, like I almost never dissect this, but like what we're doing when we're on our phones, like we're just looking at like very often like other human beings in like totally different places than we are that have like almost no relatable experience to what we're talking about. So it's like you're not where you are. Like you are in the mind or trying to be in the mind of something else or somebody else or somewhere different entirely. Like you're not present, you're not grounded. And I think that is one of the
and you're not getting like really any context or any grounding in any of it. Then you're just kind of like
you're just like floating
around and catching little pieces of stuff here and there.
Yeah, exactly. They almost bring you into this like separate reality where it becomes so difficult to just like be grounded and like remain talking and thinking about like where you actually are, because on your phone you're somewhere entirely different, or you are somebody entirely different, or you're doing something entirely different.
Yeah, it wasn't really until the pandemic I really felt like dopamine fried after a day of a screen. Like I can't I don't even want to scroll more social media. I'm so fried.
Yeah.
Which is like, oh God.
It's like a portal. Like sometimes you can just scroll for 5 minutes or look at one. Like I always find myself going on Instagram to look something up, and then like I just look that thing up and then I just start scrolling because it's just like what my fingers are accustomed to doing. Yeah. Like I won't even realize that I'm doing it.
Yeah, I don't even realize I'm watching stories.
Yeah, exactly. You just tap and you're like, oh, just tapping through.
Yeah.
You ever like been in, like at a party or something and like, or even a concert, and if you're alone and not talking to somebody, you just like your natural instinct is just kind of like pull your phone out and just like move your finger, like you're not even just like
swipe back and forth on the screen.
Yeah. Like you're not even like experiencing your phone properly. You're just kind of like
it's
doing
a way to hide.
Yeah, it is a way to hide. It's kind of like the equivalent of being at a party and holding a drink. I feel like.
Or you can be in a concert crowd or you could be somewhere and it's okay to be alone and be on your phone. Where before that's like awkward.
Yeah, right. Isn't that weird? Yeah. Like nobody would ever do that with a book.
Yeah.
But it's so weird that just become like socially acceptable.
Or on the train.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like it's like the impromptu thing that you do when you're doing nothing else.
Yeah.
So you said your process starts mostly acoustically, you said? So like you'll start with chords. When do you kind of bring stuff to the production phase?
Say like 90% of my songs start on acoustic guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes from just like playing for an hour until I accidentally do something I like.
Yeah.
And then like following that up, turning that into a riff, then seeing if I like write a chorus, and kind of like back to like the river making a path through the sand thing. Just that. But every once in a while I'll start on a synth or like a actual production idea.
When you make something acoustically first, like how often? Because a lot of your stuff is a mix of like acoustic sounds and electronic sounds.
Also, can I pause to go to the bathroom?
Yeah,
soon?
Go for it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You want to do it right now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll ask when you get back. And then
it starts acoustically.
Yeah, exactly. So like when you start a song acoustically, when do you eventually bring that to the production phase and kind of begin adding the synth and the layers and everything else that you add? And when you do so, do you ever feel like it's difficult to hold the core of the song? Like how much of the production do you think brings the original idea to light versus is it ever difficult to make sure it doesn't take away from it?
Yeah, I've toyed around with bringing it too early and bringing it too late. When I've brought it too early, like if I bring it before all the lyrics are done, the song's fully written, it can get to a point where it's like, then I dive into the production, then I listen to it a bunch, then it gets stuck, and now I have one verse and one chorus, and then it gets really hard to re-break it open and rewrite that song. And then also like there's an element of like practice of the song too. If I've written it and I've played a bunch and I like feel really good about it, then I can go and I can like perform it in like a much better version recording, and I don't have to like be like, oh, that take was shit, I gotta go like redo this a bunch of times. But like the danger of that is playing it enough and waiting too much time and not being excited about the song anymore. Yeah. And not wanting to record it and not being like, what if I had this? What if I had this? What if I had this? And then be like, recording this song becomes a chore because you're no longer excited about it.
It's like that challenge of making something feel like the first time that you hit it. You know, like the first time that you get to that place where like it felt like letting in a bottle. Yeah. And felt like, oh, I got something here. It's like getting back to that place, I would imagine, can be very difficult.
Yeah, but I found the balance is like it's better to re-record that guitar take. Yeah. Than it is to lose your speed and your momentum on the song. But I still try to have the whole song written and all the lyrics written before I record it. Yeah. Unless I really feel like I have no idea what the chorus is. Yeah. But even then, that song's probably not even getting done. So I'll write the whole song and then I'll record it.
Do you make a lot of stuff that never sees the light of day? It seems like you talk about like there's a ton of demos that do you have a bunch of demos that you think will never go out there, or are you somebody where like you only work on the stuff that you're like, oh, I'm in love with this, I can see myself putting this out?
Yeah, I'm generally more of a person that like most of what I make. Most of the songs that get done end up on it. But I mean, like, and I say I'm like that type of person, but there are a ton of songs that like have been fully written and also like produced to a demo, and then they're not going to come out, at least like not in the current iteration that they're in. And especially since like a lot of those songs I was trying to like re-break back open for the EP2, and then I decided to just like not scrap those, so they're probably not coming out. So I've got a lot of old songs, but and some recent ones too. So yeah, I guess so. But I guess the ones I don't finish, I kind of forget about. So it just kind of feels like, oh, only the ones I work on end up on the thing.
That can be so exciting when you like rediscover those songs. And you're like, oh wait, like now I know how to finish this. That's always a cool thing. I think when I talk to musicians and them talking about like, oh, like I wrote this demo like 4 years ago, and then I came back to it with a whole new perspective, and I like through my experience figured out what it was about.
They always find a way to come back in. It feels like cheating sometimes. Yeah, I've got my next single coming out. I ripped the verse melody for it from a song that was supposed to be on my first EP from like before the pandemic that never came out, that I really liked, and it was never gonna see the like light of day. And then like it just has like a whole different context on this song, and like it works great.
Do the songs like shift meaning for you over a long period of time? Like, do you ever get to a place where something meant something when you first wrote it, and then through experience or through change or whatever, you get to a place where it means something else? Like, I was talking to, I interviewed Maisie May a while ago. I don't know if you're familiar with her. Yeah. Shout out Maisie, she's great. Yeah. But she was talking to me about how, like, she'll write a song, and she doesn't even know that, like, she doesn't in the moment know what it's about. And then through the writing process and through the production process, she'll get to a place where she figures out what she was talking about.
Totally, all the time.
Yeah, that's sick.
Like, even like a song, I'll be like a year later and be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's what was going on. Yeah. Duh.
It's kind of cool, dude. It's like your brain sometimes can write for you.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. It's like a weird substitute for therapy.
Yeah.
It's a confession.
Yeah. My roommate, the guy who lives in that room right there, talks about how like he records a song every day. And he talks about
every day?
Yeah, every day. Yeah. Like they almost never come out, but he always talks about how like he'll do it, and 95% of them are just for therapy. Like 95% of them are just because therapy's too expensive. So he'll just record a song to get whatever he's feeling out, just to like figure out a way to kind of like reconcile with that emotion. Yeah, super cool. I wanted to ask about it's your bio, and it's also, I noticed that your releases on like the label section on streaming where it shows it, it's the same phrase. It says none of this was ever supposed to happen, and I read that and I was really, really curious like what that was about and where that came from, because it was kind of a feel like I'm curious if my take on it was like what you meant. I doubt it is, but like that's something I think about a lot in terms of like my own career and like what I do, and like being able to like like having the imposter syndrome, being able to like wake up every single day and like make stupid ass videos about music for a job is one of the most amazing things that's ever happened to me. Yeah. And I always think like, damn, like I don't ever think any of this was supposed to happen. But I was curious if that was like your take on it.
I feel like I should have a prize for you, the first person to ask about it.
Interesting. Let's go.
Yeah. So the story.
No one's ever asked about it?
No one's ever asked about it.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Yeah. So the story is like when I was 6 months old, I got a lot of ear infections, and then like one turned into
my brother.
Yeah, bacterial meningitis, and like I was just like a baby, and luckily, so my parents brought me to like I was like having fevers and stuff. They brought me this doctor, and like this doctor was really good and was like, wait, like maybe he has meningitis, and it ended up like being it like that ended up being true, and I had to get like airlifted to like the Boston Children's Hospital, and they like came up to my parents and were like, we're not sure he's gonna make it, like we have to give him this like experimental drug cocktail that like we use for like AIDS patients who are like doing really bad, and like we think he needs it, like it's probably gonna make him deaf, but like this is kind of it. So my parents were like, yeah, like let's do it, like of course. And so like they did it, and like I only lost like some of the hearing in my left ear. Then yeah, now I'm here. So I kind of like learning that about it, and then like especially now that I'm doing music is kind of like the tie into that is like, yeah, it wasn't really supposed to happen like anyways. So fuck it, yeah, this is it.
It's so interesting, bro. In a way, it's interesting to think about the fact that like anybody who's even alive was like a 1 in whatever 100,000 chance that like your sperm was the one that pollinated an egg.
Yeah, man.
So in a weird way, like swimmers. Yeah, we're all good swimmers, exactly. So in a weird way, like none of us were ever supposed to be here.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess
so
that's kind of like the mantra for the project. I don't really do a good job of keeping that in my mind while I'm working. You know, I'm pretty tough on myself. I procrastinate a lot.
Yeah.
Do that, a lot of shame, all that kind of stuff. But that's the mantra I try to have in all my stuff.
It's a really good grounding thing, I think. Like, even for anybody to think about. I mean, like, I think one thing that really always brings me back to earth when I get frustrated with anything musically or creatively is, like, just getting to this place where I'm like, damn, Dante, like,
damn,
if 14-year-old... damn, Dante.
Daniel.
Burp. But, like, damn, Dante, like, if 14-year-old you saw this happening right now, he wouldn't believe it.
Yeah,
so
for
it's,
sure.
So,
exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's just, like,
stoked.
That process of, like, understanding that like damn everything else is extra. Like I mean just you know speaking personally, like I'm very lucky that, like I get to like do this stuff as a job, and anything else past that point needs to be extra in my mind. Like I always think about the fact that like you know I'm definitely not making a ton of money, I'm living check to check, but I could like remain exactly where I am financially and even goal wise, career wise for the rest of my life, and like I think I'd be happy. Like, yeah. I think that's like a really, really important and grounding thing to realize. Like, you have everything that you need right here, right now. You know, It's beautiful, man. Any of us with clothes on our back, food on our plate, are very, very lucky to even be alive.
Yeah, it takes the pressure off.
Yeah,
and it's like there's a story of Will Ferrell, or like he like went to his dad is like when he just started doing comedy, he was doing like the local thing. It's like dad, like this is something I'm like really serious about, and it's like really hard. I don't know like if I'm gonna be able to do it, but like I'm gonna try doing this comedy thing. And his dad was like, that's great, like you just need to know if like at any point if you want to quit it, like that's okay too, you know, like you're gonna be okay, and like if you ever need to quit it, that's fine too. And for him it was like because like quitting was okay, and that like it's not the end of the world. It took the pressure off for me. It was like, oh, it's okay if I like am not able to do this thing, so there's no like let's do it, there's no risk, you know, like let's like I'm in a good spot, let's go for it. Yeah, exactly. It's very grounding. I think it's really easy to get in your head about like, and it's so weird because like it's almost like a product of like living in the West, right? But it's like we live in such an environment of abundance that like we're tripping about like how many fucking views our Instagram reels get, but like we're all eating every day and like have houses and like have clothes on our back. And it's like when you think about things and you kind of reframe your thinking to that mindset, right? To where like what is really success, right? If success is just
allowing, you know, being in a place where like you can work every single day at anything and like make money to survive, like you are infinitely lucky.
Yeah,
infinitely lucky.
Yeah.
I always hate when I get in that mindset when I'm frustrated about something like this, and I'm like, Dante, shut the fuck up, dude. Like, you have it so good, you know?
Yeah, man. Like, no matter what it does, it's like on your deathbed, like you said.
Yeah.
Thinking of it, old man Dante. It's like you have this stuff that you did that you're proud of, and if you put like your energy and like real shit into, like, no one can really ever take that away from you.
Yeah, thank you, bro. Yeah, and it's like, I think that is something that allows you to keep creating forever. Like, do you think, because, you know, like when you're no longer just basing the metric of success of creation on like these external factors, and you're basing it more so on like, is this fulfilling to me? Am I enjoying this? Is it fun? Like, do I really love this still? Is this serving me as a person? You totally reframe it, and you're not even thinking about the result anymore. You're just thinking about making the shit that you love, you know? Like, could you ever see yourself getting to a place where you stop music?
Yeah, I think so. I don't really know. I already stopped music for 3 years.
Yeah.
It's like an interesting thing, and I came
stop
back
putting
to
out
it.
or stop making?
All of it.
All of it?
All of it. And I was pretty unhappy through all that time. So maybe not. I don't know if I'll ever stop making music. I mean, I could definitely see myself stop releasing music.
Yeah. Which I guess are two different things.
Two different things, totally. Like, you know, when I play guitar, like the acoustic thing, and like the only time I write songs is when I'm not trying to write a song.
Yeah.
So like, and I kind of just like, my songwriting process is just like that curiosity of when I like accidentally play something that's weird, like following it down a rabbit hole. So I feel like as long as I'm playing guitar, I don't think I will ever stop writing songs.
Yeah.
But I don't know where my life's gonna be in 5-10 years, whatever. I hope I'm touring. I hope I'm like able to do this as long as I can. Like obviously, like we all care about the metrics and whatever, but like, I mean, there's definitely like a very real level of success to be able to do your stuff on a larger stage. Like, yeah, like I don't want to like knock anyone or knock myself for like seeking like the level of attention that is required for like a sustainable and like cool music career. Like, I'm also like very clear on the type of career that I want to have, but still, even in that type of career requires like a lot of eyes and a lot of still a business.
Yeah, I think I was really bad about that for a long time. Like, that was like my only metric of success. It was like, who's watching, why are they watching, and am I doing this, you know? Like, but I think as I was able to kind of like move into a place where I did this full time, I definitely have gotten to reframe my mindset a little bit, where now I'm more so thinking about like, did I wake up today and do something that I love? Yeah,
and like even further than that too, like it's like, why did you get into music specifically? Yeah. And for me, it's like the songs that I really love and like really formed me as a person. So that's also kind of like the goal as well musically. It's like, if I can make a song that at least for some portion of time is like someone's favorite song, like that's like the peak of the mountaintop for me.
That's an incredible thing, bro. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that's what I'm like chasing in music, is like the songs that are my favorite songs. I want to make one of those, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like finding that place where you're able to make art that becomes the art that you grew up loving.
Yeah, and hopefully when you do that, the rest sorts itself out, but who knows, you know?
Yeah, I feel that. That's always been a dream for me. Is like allowing somebody to find a musician that, and I think about this a lot, but like being the gateway drug to somebody finding a musician that like changes their life, because like there were so many that changed mine
100%.
And like changed the way that I look at the world. It's like, if I can be the connection point between like an individual and their love of, you know, one musician or the art they're making, that's everything. It's all of it, you know?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing, bro. I feel very lucky for sure. All right. The last thing I wanted to ask you, if you had one message that you could spread like through your music, like just like one overarching goal that you hope people get when they listen to Wilter, what would it be?
Because none of this was ever supposed to happen anyways.
Yeah. It's all extra.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, man. I love that message.
Yeah.
That's super, super cool. Yeah, those words piqued my interest immediately after I read them. I think it's so sick.
Love that. Thanks,
Hell
man.
yeah. Of course. Wilter, thank you for doing this, man.
Salute. Cheers. Thank you, guys.
Much appreciate you, bro. Big fan of your work and excited to see where you go next.
Much love. Big fan of you guys.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. Tell them where they could find you, where they could listen, where they could reach out or see you live or do everything.
Yeah, so it's Wilter. It's like Walter with an I. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram. Just search up Wilter. It's got a dot after the T, but you'll find it. Yeah, listen to my stuff. Thank you.
Walter, but with an I. Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Yep.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Music
Thank you, soul
matters.
brother.
Thank you, soul brother. Music matters. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.